it's the flip side when it comes to this discussion for white people, right? I think that they come in um, feeling so uncomfortable, feeling so awkward and on eggshells that if they say the wrong thing, they're going to get one of those labels that is easy to get, hard to get off of.
If there's something broken, I can't come to the table because every time you say something that I feel challenged by, I'm going to either respond in anger or I'm going to respond or I'm going to shut down.
If both of you could go and see the Coolies, what would you say to them?
So the McMichael's, that's who you're talking about, the shooters in the
McMichael's, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. The McMichael's. Give me a quick shot at what you would say to them.
What do we need to hear, specifically from white church leaders, regarding the issue of race?
For Dwan, what exactly is white privilege? Steve, is there a victim mentality in a black community?
Why, Steve, are you calling yourself white? And why, Dwan, are you calling yourself black? Because these are colors. To me, you both look like human beings.
Welcome, everybody. If you're just joining us for the first time, last week we went live and we talked about what's going on with race in America, also with the Ahmaud Arbery case, with the McMichael's. And as you know, the things are continuing to evolve as more evidence comes out. But we want to continue to talk about that, but we also want to talk about, I think, the bigger picture of what's happening and why this stuff is happening. We started to get into that last week, and we're going to get into more of that tonight. So I'm one of your hosts, Steve Cato, and I'm here with Dwan Dandridge. Dwan.
Yeah. So again, we're excited to be here. You'll probably realize that me and Steve have these conversations all the time with one another and with a wide range of people, and we may appear to look comfortable at times, but just know that this is not a comfortable subject matter for anybody. We just are committed to pressing into this space, and we've both been able to grow tremendously from talking to each other, people that think about this subject matter all often, people that agree with some of our positions, people that disagree with some of our positions, and through consistently having those conversations, we've just both been able to grow. We want to share that experience with you, and maybe even offer up some of the techniques that we've been able to incorporate in the way we approach the subject matter. So welcome. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Make sure that you guys text us if you guys want to jump on and share your comments or your questions, because we'll be able to bring you in to the discussion live and in real time with us. So obviously this is our first time. So, if you guys have seen anything on Instagram Live as far as those challenges, that some of the best with the deep pockets and deep budgets have some technical difficulties. But, with this being our first, please kind of bear with us and enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey. One thing that we want to remind and stress that you guys bring the real authentic version of yourself into this space. I'm going to be Dwan, and I'm not going to make any apologies for being Dwan. Steve is going to be Steve. We want you to be you. Now, as I'm going to be Dwan, Steve's going to be Steve. We're going to do our best and make sure that we are respectful to everybody and everybody's position, perspective. We want you to commit to doing the same thing. So, Steve.
Yeah. So this, one of the things we want this, and he kind of mentioned that we've been having these conversations. We want to get outside of the box. We want to get outside the normal conversations that you're having in your little silo. Part of the problem, I think, how we get to this point, how we get to the Ahmaud and the McMichael's, and how we get to Philando Castile and all of these other, and the Tamir Rice, all of these other things, and how we get to like a set of people who are like, why is this always about race? And another set of people are like, why don't you listen to us? Like, we want to have a place where, like, look, let's ask all those questions. Like, there's no judgment. Ask your questions, please. Ask your questions. we are going to treat you with respect, and we're going to methodically walk through things. So we have a call-in number, it actually text. So if you want to be on the show, and we welcome that. We welcome that. I want to see people of different perspectives to like push back. Like, I think you guys are you completely glossing over this? You're completely ignoring this. Like, this is my reality. We need to be able to have those conversations. So if you want to be on the show, if you want to call in, what you need to do is you need to text this number 313, and it's in the details if you check, but I'm just going to tell you anyway, 313-473-0499. It's going to be a Zoom call, so we're going to bring you on with us. We're going to have you ask your question, make your comment. It's open. We need to have good dialogue with this. So again, text 313-473-0499. We'll send you a set of rules and expectations, and also a link to the Zoom call. We're going to keep it respectful. You'll see the rules in there. But I think one of the things I want to start with is, DeJuan, how do you have these conversations? How are you in the different places that you're in? And I know, like, from you work in an organization that has a predominantly white culture in some ways, that's in Detroit. So it's got a white CEO. You're in different spaces where you mix with a bunch of different people and rub elbows with a bunch of different people. How do you maintain who you are in this space? How do you have these conversations and talk to so many different people without kind of compartmentalizing and keeping some of yourself back, if that makes sense?
Yeah, thanks. No, I appreciate it. So I have a couple rules that I give myself in going into any spaces, right? One is I'm willing to work with whoever is willing to roll up their sleeves and put in work, which in that sense, oftentimes I am optimistic, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes my optimism can, lean towards being naive, especially when you're talking about from a Black person's perspective, because I'm hopeful that we can move the needle. But I also charge myself to be the real, true, authentic version of DeJuan, which is a strong, proud Black male that was raised in Detroit. And, one of the things that I try to do is, if I try to find out if any space that I'm in is not wanting a strong, true, authentic Black man. And I try to find out as soon as possible so I can hurry up and get uninvited to whatever this space is, right? Like, I think that the faster I get uninvited, the better, right? But
what does that even mean? Because I think when a lot of people hear that, and especially so let me say this. Also, like, we're in a space where it's like, you can say you can be a strong Black man. Can I say I'm going to be a strong white man? So can you unpack what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so there are a few terms that you hear associated when Black people come into spaces, and they're just as confident, just as vocal, and just as passionate as white people or anybody else. And sometimes, people get like the terms like angry Black male or angry Black woman, right? And one of the things that I say is, I am an angry Black man, right? Like, I don't make any apologies for being angry. I think that I have things to be angry about, but I'm also optimistic. You know what I mean? I'm also sad. I'm also happy, right? I'm all those things. I just try not to let one of those things like run me and dictate. I let all of them influence my decision making, but I don't let any of them like dictate exactly what I do, what I say, what I feel, what I think. When I'm being my best self, there are times when I have let just one of those things dictate how I move, and those are failures that I learn from. But I walk into rooms with confidence. I walk into the rooms. Like, one of the things that you'll hear me talk about a lot is the difference between sharing resources and sharing power, because a lot of spaces that I move in, like, and living in Detroit and being active in Detroit, you see resources shared often. But, power sharing is is something totally different. And that's what I'm always advocating for, is shared power. Because if you're just sharing resources, especially if you're somebody that's white from the suburbs that has a heart for people, and you want to do right and work towards, moving the needle or supporting different causes, that shared resources without shared power looks paternalistic at best, right? So I'm about partnerships and not, paternalism. So that's what I mean by that. So if it's okay, I'd like to shoot a question to you, right? So I can remember being in a group of our mutual friends, and for the first time I heard you say, look, like, I am a white man, like, and I'm make no apologies for being a white man. Like, don't think that I'm coming into this space and because, I have the type of heart and mindset that I do, that I'm trying to like be something else, right? So I think sometimes, we're asked in different settings to check that true version of ourselves at the door if we really want to be embraced and welcomed into spaces. But hearing you say that, I was like, you know what I mean? I was kind of proud of you, and I also wanted to know what the heck did you mean by that? You know what I mean? Because when I hear like white pride in certain settings, like that's red flaggish, to be honest, right? Yeah. But hearing you say it and knowing a little bit about your track record and what you stand for made me say, wow, man, like I'm like proud of him for even saying that in this space. So what do you mean by that? As somebody that's obviously a white man, but have, lived in Detroit for over 12 years now, and have had some of the experiences that you had, like you've been attacked by Black folk, right? Like you've been shot by somebody Black, and yet, the PTSD that you often talk about, you're fighting to press past seeing like all Black people and all Black men, the way that most of us are trained to see all Black men. So like what does that mean for you to be a proud white man that cares about these type of issues?
Yeah, so for me, and this is kind of why I asked that question, because in a lot of circles, I think it's okay to say, or at least nobody's going to check you on it. They might be thinking something in their head when you say, I'm a proud Black man, I'm a proud Black woman. If I say that, though, I realize like there's a lot of things that it's just not okay to say. But I also realize I've also been the only white dude in enough around enough Koreans and Chinese Americans and Indians and American Indians and like Black Americans, Jamaicans, like it doesn't matter. Like I've been that person. So I've heard enough conversations of things that go on behind the scenes. And I realize a lot of us are having similar conversations. And so everybody's an expert on white people. And so they can kind of come at white people a certain way and kind of dog them out for being ignorant or being and just that's part of the nature of being majority culture. Like you go through life and you live because white Americans have been in power for so long, and there's certain cultural norms that we don't even think about in terms of dress, in terms of the way that you speak. A lot of the conversations that are had at levels like of executives and things like that in corporate America, a lot of those trends and things are set by white Americans. We don't think about it because we just naturally kind of flow into that. What I think is different, like from a Black American, like they're always having to, when going back to what you said, like there's a part where you get into code switching and a lot of things just to kind of make it. It's not like white people don't code switch, but all that to say is that I realize that, like, yeah, you might be an expert on white people, but you're not an expert on everybody. And I've seen enough ignorance across the board as it relates to other cultures that I started feeling more and more comfortable just being myself and realizing, like, look, we're all human. I got a lot to learn, but I'm not the only one either. And so I'm going to just embrace me. There was a time, and there's a great book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, written by a Black American author. And she just kind of outlines, like, look, as you learn about history, as you learn about yourself, a lot of people will go through this period of shame about a lot of white people will go through this period of shame. And I went through that, and being on the other side, also having enough experience as like the only white dude here and there, I started to get more and more comfortable. And I started to just appreciate being white. I mean, there's not like, this is how God made me. This is how I came into the world. It's beautiful. If we don't start accepting ourselves and loving ourselves, like I can't, like, I mean, that's just basic, especially if you're a person of faith. It's like you love others as you love yourself. If there's something broken, I can't come to the table, because every time you say something that I feel challenged by, I'm going to either respond in anger, or I'm going to respond, or I'm going to shut down. And then like, we can't actually have a real conversation. And so I think a lot of that's just about personal health. The more healthy we are personally, and the more you just accept, like, this is who I am, and I love me. Mwah, mwah. So,
All right.
you know what I'm saying? Like that, I think that's key. Like we have to have
This is a family show, so like no kissing.
Oh man. I think it's key. I think we have to give space for people to be themselves, to love themselves. We have to give people grace. I think a lot of this is one of those spaces in particular where, like, man, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for you to say something crazy so I can just pounce on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm waiting. Say something. But if somebody on my team says the same thing or similar, all I'm going to do is pivot. I'm going to do the same thing that politicians do. I'm going to make excuses for it. I'm going to pivot, and we're just, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen, and I'm going to find something on you so I can bring it up. I'm going to go back 6 months, a year and a half. Remember, look, here's that article from USA Today. Remember that? And so when we have that mentality, it's crazy. But when we just accept ourselves, I don't know, like, I'm going to make mistakes. I know coming on this show, I'm going to say something stupid. Guaranteed. You're going to say something stupid. At some point, it's going to step on somebody's toes. It's like, look, if we want to have real conversations, I need to know that stupid thing that I said, like, I don't care what anybody else says, that is not all of who I am. And we want to cancel people for saying one stupid thing. Like, let people grow. There's nobody listening. There's nobody in this world that lives a life of perfection. And yet we, like, hypocritically ask, Jesus, like, they bring the woman in adultery. They're like, throw the first stone. Go ahead, throw the first stone. And we act like we would just be throwing the stone. Whereas, like, everybody else, older people first walked away because they're like, yeah, I know I'm messed up. And so I think that's one of the greatest things about what we're trying to do. Like, look, my first stone is going to be aimed at the mirror, because I'm going to check myself first. So I know I got into a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that, and I want to see if we got anybody that wants to bring something in. So I want to make a comment, and then I also want to send the conversation in the direction that you were talking about earlier. With what you're saying, I really believe that the way that we've all been just taught, shaped, and just groomed in this nation, when it comes to the subject of race, when it comes to dealing with one another, I think that we all have been exposed in a way that we're all damaged, right? And I'll say that I am, even if somebody else is, like, not there yet and don't think that they are. But I think that if you've grown up in this society and you've seen the images, you've watched the news, you watched cops, you watched just the progression of this country, and you don't have any damage psychologically when it comes to this subject matter, then you're just a phenomenal person, and we'd love to have you on, and you can kind of like have the microphone, and we'll just kind of like listen to you and get you some water and whatever else you need. But I think that, like, taking it, like, looking at it from that approach, it's helps me extend grace, but it also reminds me that some of the stuff that I get pissed off and ticked off that other people do, when I take a really close look, I'm like, man, like, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, I do the same thing. Now, it's easier for me to give myself a pass. Why? Because I know I didn't mean anything bad or malicious by it. So I give myself a pass. But if I give myself a pass and grace, but I'm not willing to put in the work when I realize that there's some damage there, then I don't see how we ever get any better, which leads me to like what I want to throw a lob to you, because you want to talk about how we failed, right?
Yeah.
And how our failure as a society just continues to allow us to perpetuate and continue to see things like we just saw with the recent shooting. So can you set us up for that and get ready to bring in our first caller?
Yeah, so I see Rashid on here, and I appreciate all your stuff, Rashid. On the first, you like last week, you had a ton of comments, and looking forward to that. Part of why I was reading, and I've been reading, and I've been paying attention to all the different things, and partly because as I talk about it more, and as I'm in different settings talked about it, so I was invited to Woodside to talk about it with their church on a Zoom call that they put out to everybody. And in the live feed, people are like, man, this is one-sided. Man, he wasn't jockey. And so my first response is like, well, we're taking the stuff as it comes. And some people are like, well, you should wait until you have more information. And I get that. At the same time, like everybody in the world, like in the US, at least, everybody in the US, nobody waits, man. You're having the conversations. So like you might not be doing it live, but you're having the conversation. That's just how we operate with the 24/7 news cycle. But one of the things they said is like, I didn't hear anybody say, let's pray for the McMichaels. Let's pray for the assailants. My immediate response, and part of like, this is kind of like a mirror moment. Some of the things that we talked about is having like a mirror moment. Like when you take a look in the mirror and you actually critique yourself, my immediate response was to be like, yeah, I'm good. Like for what? You know what I'm saying? Like we don't need to do that. And then later I came back and I was like, no, dude, you're wrong. You're wrong. And I started looking at some things. One of the things I looked at is the fact that like the police. So this dude, the homeowner, had been having people come in his house and he didn't want it. That's why the cameras were in there. And you see and he's like, nobody points to like, he wasn't in contact with McMichael's. He was in contact with another neighbor. He was in a neighborhood that sounds a lot like yours, Dewan, where people are very engaged, people are involved, and they're very active, and they're looking out for each other. But the police text the homeowner and was like, look, you can call McMichael. He's a good dude. He's a former officer. And that like really struck me because I realized like in this community, this is a respected dude. This is the police officer down the street. And so people are like, he's one of the guys that's going to take care of us. And then I'm also realizing like, but like if you put that in the context of Black America, and if you say like this 60-year-old white man who's a former cop is somebody who's going to be like connected to people as it's associated with video surveillance and people coming into a active work site and so on, like that's a nightmare. And I was just thinking like how different our perspectives are based. Like I don't freak out real bad when I see the police, but you know what I'm saying? I don't have the same kind of, I remember when I was a kid, we were rollerblading downtown and the police actually came and we taunted them and they chased us. And I could skate. One of us got nicked, like the only non-hockey player that was with us. And he spent the night in jail and that was it. You know what I'm saying? But like, I didn't have this fear. Like I didn't have those conversations with like my parents weren't like, now, Stephen, the police aren't going to treat you like everybody else. Those kind of things, and there weren't all these things, you don't have the newspaper articles, the things that you see now happen. So I just have a different perspective of police where I realize like Black Americans don't have that. It's so different. And so the perspective of the cops is like, hey, contact this guy. That would be you would never do that in a Black community. Like that would never be a good idea. So the reason I say we failed is because I'm like, look, the fact that we are so far apart on this kind of stuff, like we're setting everybody up for failure. And at the end of the day, Ahmaud is not going home to sleep in his bed again. Every Mother's Day will be like this past one, full of sorrow and grief. But at the same time, These men, their lives are changed forever too. And I think the thing that I'm saying is that like we need to take the gravity of that, like the effect of like our brokenness in society is having a like this is life shattering. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what their lives are like? Hey, grandpa's not coming home anymore. Daddy's not coming home anymore. They're locked up and they're in the middle of this huge controversy. And I'm not making excuses for them. And I'm not saying they did the right thing. And I'm not like any of that, but I'm saying like they're humans too. And I'm like, we fail them as a country because we can't get this stuff together. We can't have real conversations. I had one of the first good conversations that involved politics tonight with my mom. Tonight, I haven't been able to have conversations with people across the aisle and act like a decent human being and not raise my voice and not let my temper get me and not just be super emotional. Like that stuff needs to change. It's like across the board. And so that's what I'm saying. We're failing all of us. We're failing white people. We're failing black people, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans. We are failing everybody. And so that's why I'm so excited about this show, because I'm like, let's everybody get on the phone. Like the people that were like pressing back, like on the Woodside chat, like I want to reach out to them. Like, please come share your views. Like, tell me like you're pissed that everybody makes it all about race. Tell me that you think that like people are getting at you personally. Let's have that conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
no, that's good. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for I guess even giving that issue and that challenge to yourself, which like means the challenge goes out to everybody else that would accept it, to embrace like our shortcomings in that regard. I would say it remains to be seen if they will come home or not, right? Like that's one of the things
100%.
Extra hard for me to get to the point where like I'm praying for them. And let me say this to myself and everybody else. We're not going to fix all of this stuff in a 1 hour discussion, right? So like, let me take the pressure off of myself to try to do that. I'm excited to hear what Rashid Jeffries has to say on the subject matter. He's been waiting patiently. And I just want to invite him in to give us the question or the comments that he's been so patiently waiting. Thanks for joining us, Rashid. What's up?
Man, thank you for having me. I've been waiting on this conversation for quite some time. Steve Cato is
real quick, and welcome, Rashid. If you want, what happens is, so he said he wanted to be on the show. We sent him the Zoom information. So if you want to be on the show, if you have something to say, if you have a comment, if you have a question, text that to 313-473-0499. We'll send you the Zoom information along with that stuff. You can get on, share your opinion, ask a question, whatever you want to do. We need to do this as a community. So go ahead, man. I appreciate you being on here.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me, Steve. This is a brother who I've been impressed with for some years. Met him at Detroit Rescue Mission, and we hit it off ever since then. He's a cool guy, man. I was been looking forward to meeting you, Dewan, because I heard so many great things about you from Steve, just in what I've read over his posts, and I saw that last post that you guys did. And Ralph is a surprise, man. I know Ralph from back in the day, so it's nice to see his face as well. It's a small world.
Yeah, shout out to Ralph. So Ralph is the magician behind the scenes making all this stuff happen.
Yeah, that's my brother, man. I love that brother and his whole family. So listen, years ago, when my daughter, she'll be 19, she was 2 years old. Just turned 2. We were in my kitchen. And she was excited. She looked up. It was dark. It was nighttime. She looked up at the window and she said, "Look, the moon." So I looked at the window and I said, "No, sweetie, that's not the moon." And so she became adamant. "No, Daddy, that's the moon." And she limited speech, limited conversation, but she was very clear that she was looking at the moon. Now I know my daughter knows what the moon is at that point. So I'm kind of confused because she's pointing at the window and she's saying moon, but there's no moon. And so I was going back and forth with her until she got so adamant that I decided, hold on, let me think about this. and something told me to stoop down to her level. And I stooped down to her level, a 2-year-old's level, as short as she was. I got on my knees and I looked up from where she was looking. And sure enough, there was the moon.
Man.
Because the blinds shielded it from my view. I couldn't see the moon from where I was looking. But when I looked at it from her view, it was clear. And I think that's something that needs to happen with America. I think white America, if they would make that decision, and it could be tough, because I was adamant too. No, the moon is not there. But if they can figure out a way to see it from a different perspective, then perhaps they'll be able to at least understand. Now, I couldn't stay where she was, because I've heard people say that. But at least if you can get in my shoes for a moment, then maybe you can have some empathy. Because what Black people have been screaming for years is completely legitimate. What we feel is completely legitimate. When I saw the video of the young man who got shot, so many things went through my mind, not only of my personal experiences, but the track record that America has, the very recent track record that we have of the injustices that have taken place. And my concern was not so much with the act of murder, which was pretty blatant to me. I think it was obvious what happened. But my concern was, what's going to happen in the aftermath? What's going to happen to these gentlemen that just murdered in cold blood? How would the perception of America be? Because if it's anything like what it's been, that's the issue that I have. We can kill each other and people can receive justice. Whites can kill whites, blacks can kill blacks, but it seems like in America, when whites kill blacks, it's a different dynamic there. And that's what blacks are outraged about. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. And I know a lot of white people that I love. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know very many white people that I don't think are cool. Most of them are cool.
I want to ask you a question real quick.
Okay.
Because you say things like everybody's on the same page, kind of like the injustices when a white person kills a black person. What are some examples? Just so we are on the same page, because not everybody is looking at the same thing or referencing the same database that you are.
Well, the biggest thing is the one that comes to mind first, that's most similar to the Ahmaud Arbery case, is the I'm drawing a blank. The guy with the hoodie. Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin is the most obvious. That situation is eerily similar to this situation right here. And I'm very afraid that we're going to have a very similar outcome. And I think it's an outrage. And it was an outrage then. I think it's ridiculous that George Zimmerman is still walking around a free man, considering what he did. It doesn't seem like he's remorseful, and life goes on. But
let me fill something in real quick on that, because I had somebody on one of my posts say, because I mentioned Trayvon, and because they were talking about facts, and I was like, here's the facts. Like Trayvon dead, Tamir dead, Philando dead, Ahmaud dead, Sandra dead. You know what I'm saying? And part of why I focus on the particular list that I do is because really these are like innocent people from the, like, I'm not getting into this. We can have the conversation about like Eric Garner and stuff, but I'm gonna focus on the ones that are super clean. We'll get into all that stuff later. But one of the things that people like, wait, didn't he like break Zimmerman's nose though? And so I was like, let me go back. So I just refreshed my memory on the I'm looking at the police call, and I'm looking at Zimmerman. So he's like, Zimmerman, this is what he says: these assholes always get away with this kind of stuff. So he hasn't seen him do anything. He sees a black kid, 17-year-old black kid in a hoodie. 911, sir, are you following him? Zimmerman, yes. 911, we don't need you to do that. Zimmerman, okay. This is altercation. This is pre everything. And so like, that was just like, so to your point on the connection, I wanted to draw it out just so we can kind of see like how really, really similar this is. Like when you have like not the police and we have our own issues with the police as it relates to relating and interacting with Black people, Black males in particular. But I'm like, man, what if these guys had just pulled out a cell phone? You know what I'm saying? If you're that worried, if you're that convinced that this is the guy that has been coming into the house or whatever the concerns are, what if you would pull out a couple of cell phones and called it and let the police do their job? So keep going, man. I just wanted to kind of jump in with a little more detail.
Yeah, I mean, and I can go on forever. I'm gonna try to close out so that I can give other people an opportunity to speak. But I just want to share my heart. My heart is that, and I've had plenty of conversations with my white brothers and my white sisters, and my issue is let's have this dialogue. Sometimes it feels like, and this is why I'm so excited about this platform, because sometimes it feels like to me that white people are not willing to have the conversation. And I think the conversation is going to be therapeutic, and I think eye-opening, and I think it could be the start of something awesome if we can just be able to dialogue and understand each other. Then perhaps we can change the way people see things. We can change some perceptions, because I do believe, just like this, I believe that is most of the people who Black America is angry with, I don't think it's malicious. I think a lot of white America don't even know that they have this issue. I don't even think they understand
100%.
that their perspective is skewed, because they're seeing the world through white privilege, and they didn't ask for that. They were born into it. So this is just something that they experience in life, and it's different from our experience, but it causes them not to be able to see things the way we see things. And so they can't even see the injustice. They can't see the disenfranchisement. They can't see, all they look at is, why can't you do what I do? Why can't you be, I'm surviving, why can't you survive? So they see a victim mentality, not understanding all of the things that we have to go through just to be on even playing field. And even then, the playing field is not really even. But all of that can change, but I think it starts with a conversation. I'm just interested to have that dialogue with my white brothers and sisters.
Let me throw something at you, and we gotta let you go after this. So I'm gonna do something unfair to you, but this is gonna be Black on Black unfairness, right? So I'm gonna ask you a question, but I'm gonna need you to try to get us a quick answer, because we got somebody else probably anxiously waiting. One of the things that I'm really aware of in certain settings is I often see like really, really strong, dynamic Black people working in a professional setting, and also the evangelical space, right? Those are two spaces that I spend time in. And I often see them check the real authentic version of themselves at the door, because I think that there's an unsaid expectation that they come in a little bit more docile, a little bit more approachable, and I guess non-threatening is a term that comes to mind, as if like you being the real Rashid Jeffries should be threatening to anybody, right? But I see that, and I notice it, and it sticks out to me right away, and it really, really like troubles me when I see that happening. Now on the flip side, I think that oftentimes Black people, we understand that like, we live in this space. We were groomed in this space. So we have to be aware of race. We have to like be like really advance on the subject matter, we have to know how to exist in spaces because we know that people feel like they should be able to control our bodies, right? So we know, like, when we're getting on the elevator and there's a couple white women there, we know to put on a posture and a demeanor that feels non-threatening to them, right? So that they don't feel like they have to hold their purses tight, right? So we know how to do that. It's the flip side when it comes to this discussion for white people, right? I think that they come in feeling so uncomfortable, feeling so awkward and on eggshells that if they say the wrong thing, they're going to get one of those labels that it's easy to get, hard to get off of them, right? So what
100%.
do we do to figure out how to let them come into this space and not have to change who they are for the fear of us waiting on them to slip so we can call the racist police, us being the racist police on them, right?
You say, so what do we do to ease that fear or to ease that tension?
Not to make it comfortable,
mm-hmm.
to make it like realistic and possible.
Well, my personal opinion, I think the onus of that is on them. I don't take responsibility for what they should do because I can't control them. Now, I can try to create an atmosphere as best as I can by being real myself. You know, one of the things I pride myself on is, or no, I ain't gonna say pride myself. I notice that there is always a temptation when I'm dealing with white people to put on a certain image. And so it's tough for me, but I try to make sure that when I'm around white people, that I consciously make sure that I'm myself. And sometimes it has to be conscious because when I'm around Black people, I'm not conscious of it. I'm just comfortable. It's natural. I'm myself. But sometimes when I'm around white people, there's something in me that wants to portray myself a certain way. So when I feel that, then I make sure, nope, I resist that. I'm like, nope, I'm going to be myself. And sometimes, so I purposely look at a Steve. I purposely look at a Steve as if he is a Black guy, and I speak to him that way. So the thing that I do is I make sure that I am naturally me to influence him to be naturally him, and then allow him to have the courage, because it takes courage for me to do that, because I don't want them to stereotype me. This is just some, uneducated Black guy. Sometimes I talk in broken English on purpose, just so that this white guy know, man, this is me. This is how I talk. And I know how to speak correct English, but I'm going to purposely speak in Ebonics to you just so that I can make sure that I stay in that space, and hopefully that'll encourage him to stay in his space. Be you, because I'm going to be me.
I appreciate that. I hope you are a regular caller, because I could keep going back and forth and hearing from you for hours, but we only have 18 more minutes and we got 2 callers that we need to jump on.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep listening.
Appreciate you, bro.
All right.
Yeah. So while Ralph is getting our next caller queued up, another shout out to Ralph. We appreciate you so much. Steve, some of what Rashid said resonates with me. That part of him saying, I'm going to be intentional about making sure that I'm myself, and I'm going to first admit, that is a work that it takes to do that, right? You don't just him, somebody that, obviously in that few minutes that we got a chance to talk to him, it comes off that he's definitely a proud Black man and not ashamed of being a Black man. That definitely came out. But even him, saying that he has to be intentional about making sure that he does that and he's a real version of himself is something that I just think we need to do a whole segment or show on within itself. I think we need to just have a time where we just talk about that because that was powerful. And I'm glad that he said that. I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that like fights that temptation to, turn yourself down or tone yourself down in that space.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd push back there is though so I agree when he says the onus is on white people for that. I mean, I think, and I talked about that a little bit earlier. You have to be okay with yourself, and you have to be okay. Like when someone attacks you, like even if you were wrong, even if you weren't wrong, it doesn't matter. Like we have to be able to disconnect that emotional judgment and shame and guilt that comes with being wrong or being incapable at something. Like I told myself for a good portion of my life there was something wrong with me. So every interaction I'm having, like I'm always reading the room for like cues and stuff with people, and that has a devastating effect on people. And so I think what I would say is I've been around people who are like, I'm tired of the questions about the hair. I'm tired of this and that. So they're kind of on the edge and they're waiting for people. So for him, you can already tell with his vibe, like you can kind of just roll. He's gonna treat you with grace and respect and try to like and help people along. But I think enough white people have been in conversations where like they've said like one little thing and their intentions are good too, and like people jump on them. And so I think it actually takes both sides to be able to come like, look, I recognize, and we can talk about the power dynamics, and we can talk about like, oh, I don't want to like do this for white people. They've had the power all the life. I'm not going to cater to them. Like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Like, I understand. I get it. Do we want to move the thing forward though, or not? So that would be the one pushback I'd say. And I'm not talking about be yourself, but also give people the grace and the space. And part of that, like what I think you do so well, is you're always looking in the mirror. And it might not be this particular topic, but like you got some issues, you got some growing. And so I think having that perspective is key. I know we got someone who's been waiting on the line. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I think Ralph might need are we live, Ralph? Ralph didn't give me the cue yet. All right, so while we're still getting ready to bring the next caller in, I would say, Steve, I feel that, and though I feel like a little bit different from Rashid on that, I feel like it's important to create a space that people are going to be okay with being themselves in. I also realize that it always feels like the heavy lifting has to be done by the Black folk, right? And that's the part. So it's like, it feels like another space where things just aren't fair because we're asked to be extra graceful, extra compassionate, and even like I'll take it a step further. Like I say, like even welcoming, like the people to be themselves in that space. I believe it's necessary. I believe it's important enough to do that. And oftentimes it feels like, a cultural reference to Friday. Like I think Smokey was like doing somewhere he was getting ready to trade somebody something. And he was like, same time. And it's like, somebody's got to go first, right? It's like, but you feel like if you go first and you extend grace and you're extra gracious, then you're just going to be taken advantage of. You know what I mean? And we're tired of that. And there's no,
Yeah, let me jump in and also say this. Like, I think that this is part of, so look, it's not just Black people. Like, white people that are like all of a sudden woke are jumping on other white people and dogging them out using hashtags on Twitter that are like in vogue now, so they can kind of like get their shots in. And now all the people of color like that are their friends are like, man, Nikki's all right. You know what I'm saying? That just, I hate that stuff. Like, and I used to be like, that's how I used to be. Like, I used to be this, like, So I've been talking about race stuff. Like, I took like a real deep dive, like just into the depths of depression and PTSD and all this kind of stuff. But I've been talking about stuff and like since I was at MSU 20 years ago about stuff. So like I used to be the dude who would jump down people's throats. So I think part of want to say quickly, like, we need to get, like, white people need to be better at, like, having these conversations and doing some of that heavy lifting. But we also need to do it in a way that's graceful, that thinks about your own process, that they, like, I keep coming back to empathy. Like, anytime you come at me about, like, defending the McMichael's, or be like, he wasn't jogging, he was trespassing, he this, that, and the other. And I'm like, dude, let's talk about, he's not coming home. Like, so look, I used to hang with the valedictorian of one of the high schools. That dude stole like nobody's business. White dude, funny as all get out, stole like, and he didn't need to, but he's still alive. So I think if we could put these things in context, and when white people have these conversations, they act like their stuff doesn't stink. They act like they don't have drug addicts in their family. They act like they don't have alcoholics in their family. I got both. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got people who, like, all kind of stuff in my family. Like, we act like that. So that's the kind of thing. It's just bringing perspective. It's like, is this how you want, like, them to treat Robert? Like, bringing it home. So anyway, I know we got somebody on the line.
We got to bring our next caller in. I just want to say, Steve will let you know in the comment section what year he graduated. So if you want to Google and figure out who the valedictorian was and find out if that whatever it was came up missing was him that stole it, just check, send Steve a shout out in the comment section. So welcome to our next guest. I'm going to let my sister and a good friend of ours introduce herself and fire away with her questions, comments, or whatever it is that she wants to say.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, good conversation. Hi, Steve. Hi, Juwan.
Hey.
What up?
Couple of thoughts. I've been trying to figure out how to pray for them. I'm sorry?
Can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm Charlene Gordon, and I'm a member of Race Matters, and have done some other things that's race-related in the community. I have one brother who's white and one who's Black, and we were all raised together. So I've been trying to figure out how to pray for the gentlemen, their name, the Coolies. And I'm really wondering if both of you could go and see the Coolies, what would you say to them?
So the McMichael's, that's who you're talking about, the shooters in the
McMichael's, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. The McMichael's. Give me a quick shot at what you would say to them.
Boy.
So can I just share with you, met with that on that, right? So I'm part of a men's Bible study that meets on Saturday mornings. We've been meeting for the past 12 years. And last Saturday, you know, during prayer time, I was trying to pray for them, and that ended up just being a confession and a cry to the Lord, saying, look, like, I am not able to, I don't know what to say. And I didn't want to be like faking it and doing it because I feel like it's something that, you know, my faith has told me I'm supposed to do, because it wouldn't have been genuine in the moment, right? So I was just asking for help in regards to that. One of the things that, you know, I think we need to be comfortable with crying out for within the faith of Christianity, and you know, I am a believer in Jesus, follower of Jesus. In times like this, I want to cry out for justice, right? Because I think that justice being served could definitely help them and serve them, right? I think having some time to sit still and realize and unpack what they did that was wrong might serve them and hopefully bring them to repentance, right? So that's probably that's where I'm at. I don't see myself as somebody that would necessarily go and visit them. I wouldn't do it today. You know what I mean? And if I was going to spend any resources and time and energy, it would probably be to go and comfort Ahmaud's family, But I am trying to get to the place where I can genuinely petition the Father on their behalf.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I actually agree the justice part, and I think that's part of what I talked about with the failure, how we failed in terms of our expectations. Because if we're seriously prosecuting people, and it's very clear that it's not okay to do this kind of stuff. So going back to the Zimmerman thing, right? Zimmerman fought the cases are so similar. That dude gets hemmed up. He's in prison right now. Other police officers who, are in prison right now. This might be a different story for them. They might have a different approach. They might have just gotten out some cell phones. They might have just called 911. Might have. I don't know. For me, I think, and I agree with everything that Dewan said, but the thing that, and this is not my nature. This is kind of something new for me. Like, I actually feel empathy and compassion for them. So I would want to ask, I would ask them questions. I would ask them questions about what they were thinking, how they get to this point, like how they make these decisions, what they wish. I want to hear about their family. I want to hear about all this. And part of it, I want that to sink in for me, because I want to know, we need to avoid this. We need to, I need that to sink in for me. I need to see all your hopes and your dreams and everything. Because if you do get locked up, if you are gone from society, I want to carry that. Because I'm we got to stop. You got to get off your butt, dude. You got to speak up. You got to speak out. You got to push. You got to push. Because these dudes aren't coming home, and he's gone forever. And his parents will never get a chance to talk to him again. And all they have is God, memories. That's it. And clothes. And going into his closet and just smelling his clothes. I got one shirt left from my dad. One. And it's tattered around the collar, so I don't even wear it anymore, but it's still in my closet. We got to have empathy and compassion for people, to put the work in, to get it done for everybody. This poison affects all of us. So look, I know we understand the travesty, Black people understand what's happening to people of color, but I don't think we even begin to understand how this impacts white people. It's for all of us. All of us. I think we need to get it. This is serious. Everybody needs to understand. It's not just the people that are on the other end of the shotgun that are dying here. It's poison for everybody. I appreciate your question. I love the question.
Yeah. I asked that question because I'm finding that in this country, we appear to have some type of a breeding ground for this white psychosis. And we have these lone wolves killing children and men with hard hearts that is not being addressed. And until we can address the white psychosis, I know we've talked a lot about this in Race Matters, Dewan. Until we can really address that, then we're going to continue to have these incidences. That hard heart has to be dealt with. And I don't know who's going to do it. And very much think that it's on white America to address white America. Or we'll keep breeding Timothy McVeighs. I'm going to go off now and thank you. This has been excellent.
Thank you. Love you. Thanks for coming on.
So I think we got one more caller in the queue. I know we're supposed to wrap up at 10. I do want to at least take this last caller. And we need some of the things that Rashid brought up. We actually need some people that represent a different perspective. We need white people that are comfortable coming on. I do want to reach out to some of the people that were responding on the Woodside chat that are on the side of the fence, other side of the fence. I need to know how you feel when people bring up race and all that kind of stuff. So Ralph, let us know when we're good. But we need to have these honest conversations and really understand where you're coming from.
So I would say this. I can only speak for myself here, but the beautiful thing is this isn't ABC, NBC, or any of those things. So if we run over a little bit, I'm cool with that, right? But I have to get a signal from you and from Ralph if that's okay, because if we have more people,
let's keep going.
We got a couple more people on. I'd love to hear from them. I really want to continue the conversation a little bit farther. So we got Nathan Cole jumping on with us now. So Nathan, welcome. Thank you for your patience, and fire away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I just recently got connected to Steve via Facebook. Rashid, who was one of the previous callers, actually connected us recently. I got a chance to listen to some of your videos that you posted. And then, through you kind of getting connected to Dewan, I think we're Facebook friends now as well. So first of all, what I want to say is I'm so grateful for what you guys are doing in this whole forum, this whole platform. Steve, with a couple of your videos, I've just really appreciated the level of vulnerability, transparency, honesty that you're bringing to the conversation, and just the grace on both sides of this conversation to be able to hear from people what the real deal is, what's really going on, so we could begin to address it. I think this is something that's desperately needed. So just to introduce myself real quick, I am a minister. I'm on a leadership team at a church called Embassy Covenant Church in the Metro Detroit area. And I also am a youth leader for a group of Chinese high school students in the Madison Heights area. I grew up as sort of the white kid in the black church for the majority of my life, really since infancy. Grew up in that environment. My parents were church leaders, and so I've been kind of inundated in just different cultures throughout my upbringing and stuff. So what I found though was that though I was around a lot of people that were different than me, though I was around a lot of black people, for example, church family, people around my family. It wasn't until we started having some really intentional conversations that things really began to come into focus in terms of the things that I didn't know, the things that I was ignorant about. And so, it was kind of when Trayvon Martin case kind of came up several years ago, just watching the different reactions that people initially had to that case, what the assumptions were, what the implicit biases were when we were talking through that. Really brought a lot of things to light. And so I guess I think that we just need a lot more of this. We need a lot more open, honest dialogue between people. And we really need to build relationships with people that are different from us and people that are in a different context, so we can have that relational sharing. Yeah. I guess I missed the first part of the call, so I'm not sure what the format is. Do I ask you guys a question? How does this work? I do have a question to ask you guys, though.
A comment or question is fine.
Sure. So I guess my question would be, coming from a position of someone who's in ministry, what do we need to hear specifically from white church leaders regarding the issue of race? What do we need to hear from people? I know that a lot of people are saying there's just a lot of silence. A lot of people just kind of not commenting on this issue, and there's this cry for people to stand up and speak out. And so I just want to hear what we need to hear from those of us that are in ministry with regard to the race issue.
I will take a stab at that, Steve. And Ralph, if we got more calling, you might want to let Nathan finish listening in Facebook and then bring whoever else on. Thank you for the question. So I'll give you my response to that. I had a friend recently ask me, a really good friend of mine who's in ministry, he's a leader in a suburban church. He asked, is it necessary? Like, do we need to continue to have discussions about race? Can't we just love each other if we all believe the same thing, if we are all in the same household of faith? I think he was talking more of specifically a Christian setting and people that ascribe to that faith. He said, and he gave a reference. He said, if we're at war, right, and we're in the trenches, we're in the foxhole, you're not concerned with what color I am, what color you are. We have a common enemy, right? So if the enemy's there and we're fighting against the enemy, why does it even matter, right? So if we are in the same faith and we believe that we have a common enemy, Satan, the devil, whoever, like you, Lucifer, whatever you call the enemy, right? Why is it necessary to even like have discussions about that? Because we should be more focused on like, the real enemy. And my response to that was, I'm so glad that you used that example and that reference, because there have been collaborative effort to fight wars from this country's standpoint, right? There's been Black soldiers that fought alongside of white soldiers, that fought alongside of brown soldiers. And they would stand side by side and fight against whoever that common enemy was. But when they got back from war, something happened, right? It's like the white soldiers were able to take advantage of the GI Bill and all the other benefits that are afforded to you when you are a soldier and you fight for this nation. The Black soldiers didn't get to take advantage of those benefits in the same way. And I'm sure that some of those Black soldiers that were fighting alongside of those white soldiers wish that some of those white soldiers would stand with them and fight on behalf of them to make sure that they got a chance to get access to some of those same resources, right? And they didn't. They didn't get the resources, and those soldiers that didn't see their color when they were fighting against a common enemy saw it when they got back here, right? And that's who, like, the white evangelical community is when we're talking about Mike Brown, we're talking about Trayvon Martin, we're talking about Tamir Rice, you know what I mean? Like, that's who you've been. You can't continue to stand silent. You have, if you believe that we're a part of the same like family and household of faith, when we're crying out for justice, we're crying out for equality, you have to stand with us. Otherwise, it's hard to tell the difference between like someone that is against us and someone that is just cool with us, like seeming like we're crying wolf, right? That's my 2 cents on it.
Yep. I know we got Walker coming on. The one thing I would say is like, especially if we're talking about people in the household of faith, one of the things as Walker's coming on, we in Acts, there's a certain set of the population, a certain ethnic group that's not being cared for properly. And they didn't have this big back and forth. They didn't say, that's not me. They did something about it. They empowered people to do something about it. And I just don't see us. One, we don't have the relationship to do that. So Nathan, I think, brings up a great point. It's a huge problem. Why we don't see eye to eye, why we don't understand each other. Yeah, I got Black friends, yep, at work, etc. I got white friends, whatever the case may be. Well, we don't have real relationships. I'm not really trying to understand you. I'm not really being in your life and having honest conversation. And I think that's got to be part of it in order for us to move forward.
Thanks. Q Walker up. Give him some freedom of voice by unmuting him. And I'm gonna let Walker introduce himself. A good friend of mine. Go ahead, Walker.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. Long time no see. Steve, it's been a minute since we talked last time.
Too long.
My name is Waka. I'm from Ethiopia. I've been living in the Metro Detroit area the last about 10 years. And I have been traveling around the country now lately because of my job. I try to put it in 3 questions for both of you guys and trying to understand, because I'm struggling with this ideas. The first one is Black Lives Matter, and then there's well, White Lives Matter too. I've seen a meme on Facebook say, if you just forget about the color, we'll be fighting with you. White people are dying the same rate, probably more rate than Black people. So how about we put the color on the side and fight this state of police brutality together. If you put a race in there, there is no working together. That's what I have seen, and I want you both to respond on that. And do you want me to go to the next question, or you want to answer on that first?
So because we're already an hour over, 9 minutes over our time, give us the top question, Waka, and then come back next week and ask us the other two.
All right. One more question. So
give us the one that you want to hear from us the most on.
All right, let me go to the second one. That's what I want to hear from you guys. For Dwan, what exactly is white privilege? That's my question for you. And Steve, is there a victim mentality in a Black community? Because I say that I want you to think, to put something in mind, because Jesus said, "Carry my cross and follow me." Is it personal responsibility to get us where we be? And how do you see it from the Bible perspective that Abraham left his village and moved to his responsibility? You know, forget about his father and then his family, his friends. Do we get out of the hood and see other places, and how we carry responsibility for our lives, and be do what we supposed to do in life? I don't know if I put it clearly, but that's my top question. I want to hear from you guys.
So, what is white privilege? I'll try to define it by giving examples. That's probably easier for my mind works. And I would say, I believe that white privilege is a thing. I think that I don't use the term that much when I'm having discussion, because it's one of those terms that's like, sometimes it's a very important term to me, but sometimes it's used as a stick, like for like hitting somebody, and not like for something to advance the conversation. But I think it's a real term. It's a real thing all the same. So when I think about the term white privilege, or what it is, I think it's kind of controlling the narrative. I think it's being able to do like it's able to be very proud of the founding fathers of this nation, and sing songs of praise and have holidays earmarked that we celebrate the founding fathers, but then still want to say, I never owned a slave, right? Like, I shouldn't be like held accountable, right? So it's to be able to say, I want to celebrate and embrace and benefit from all of the wins that the founding fathers of this nation had, but I don't want any of the responsibility, right? At all. So that, to me, is what I think about, like, when I think of white privilege, right? So, and there's many more and many layers to that, but for the sake of time and to try to summarize it as best I can in this moment, that's what I would share. So.
And I think we need a whole episode devoted to that. And because I think there's a whole lot of white people out there right now pretty disappointed in that. I just think it needs so much space to be able to give back and forth. I think there's one quick example. So we have a friend, Black American, in the Detroit area. His name is Tamashian. It does not sound like a white European American name. He did this little experiment, and he sent out his resume that said Tamashian Jones. Same resume. He sent out a resume that said Tim Jones. Same thing. Same companies. Don't. Tim got a whole lot more callbacks than Tamashian did. So I think those are I think there's a ton to unpack here. And I think that I think this is another failure and this is where I think that honestly, I think white people need to start to get in and to kind of understand the psyche of other white people. Like if you just accept this, like the way we're having these conversations just doesn't get to the core, doesn't connect with people on an emotional level. Or I think we need more examples of a lot of things. Question to me, does the victim mentality exist? So I'm going to say so 100%. I think it does, but I don't think it's everybody either. And I think that, let me say this, like this is probably a lot of people off, but I do think that there is a way to hold both in balance. I think there's a way to recognize the injustices, recognize oppression, speak out and fight against it, but also not just wait for white people to come do X, Y, or Z. Like I think you have to be doing both at the same time. You have to take ownership. You have to do what you can. And I'm not an advocate for people getting out of the hood. Traveling, I think, is great. I think neighborhoods need to be built up. And I think primarily that has to be Black families, Black leaders, coming in and helping to restore the thing. And I think the narrative we want to tell and the narrative we often tell, like we talked about last time, there's an article in Detroit. It talks about all these amazing white entrepreneurs that are doing things. That's just not true. Like they're doing some great things. I get it, but like there are amazing people here. I think stories like that. I'm not a just pull yourself up by your bootstraps completely. Like I recognize stuff is stacked against you, but like one of the people that one of the things that like people say that I respect is like, but now what though? Are you just gonna are you just gonna take that and be like, I'm not gonna make it because? Are you gonna give me a list of why you're not gonna make it, or are you gonna push like hell so that like other people can make it, so that other people so that you're gonna be in these spaces and create opportunities and do all this stuff? Yep, it's harder. I also think that like from a resilience standpoint, I think people of color actually have an advantage of coming up against adversity because your whole life is adversity. Because things are stacked against you. And it's always been hard. And so you develop these muscles that like people like me, like don't necessarily have to develop if they're growing up in privilege. So I think perspective is key. Like I said, like we probably have to, like people that have issue with what I said, we probably have to have a long conversation to unpack a lot of that. Like there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of like individual this, that, and other. But I think it's mixed. I don't think I would not ever say across the board, yeah, everybody has victim mentality. I just think that it exists. And I think for a decent, for a portion of the population.
I want you to be a regular caller too, because I want you to bring those questions that's gonna put us in a hot seat. And Steve gonna probably get a couple hate comments after that. I'll probably get a couple. People may give me some hate comments, or they may just feel a strong way about me. Well, hopefully, if you feel a strong way about me, please have a conversation with me. I'll have some virtual coffee with you to unpack more about it and get some pushback. But I'm not gonna be scared to say it, what I'm thinking. So don't be scared to ask me a question or call me out on it. I welcome it. Waka, we got a peace out with you. Love you, bro.
You guys.
Thanks for jumping on.
Great discussion. Keep it up.
Yep.
Thanks, Waka.
I think we should go ahead and kind of wrap it up. Ralph, did we have anybody else waiting in the queue patiently? We have one more person. Let's bring that person on, see if we can't get them on. We're gonna do a better job of wrapping up quicker next year. I mean, next week.
Next year is about right, probably.
Yeah, next year. Next year.
But we got,
But,
look, we got a YouTube channel. Can somebody find our YouTube page? It's the Can I Be On a Show? Can anybody find that and post the first episode? Maybe I'll just find it. I'll be looking crazy for a minute off camera. But I'll post the first episode. If you guys want to subscribe, share that with people. One of the things we would really appreciate is if you just tell people. We want to have honest conversations. I don't want to have an honest conversation with everybody who already believes like similarly to us or is on one side or the other. Like we need to like expand, and we need to be challenged. So I'm gonna try to look for that now. I'll share it in the comments as we get the next person on. Juwan, I think we're kind of still in limbo now.
Yeah. So as while we're bringing the next person on, a little bit about like that last caller, Waka. Waka is a good friend of ours. Waka was a part of a group that me and Steve have been a member of for I don't even know how many years now, but Race Matters. It was a group of people that would get together and have discussions about race. And we would, just go into the uncomfortable spaces and have dialogue. And there was a lot of, things that happened. I mean, we're never short of subject matter because all we had to do was like wait on something to happen in the news. And like Steve, I think mentioned earlier, these conversations are happening, right? It's just that normally we have them in our silos, right? Like I have not been in a barbershop in all my years of where these subjects didn't come up, right? Like, so we talk about them. But the thing was, like, when we talk about them with people that agree with us all the time, like, it's hard to grow. It's hard to be stretched. It's hard to even, like, be able to fully articulate my own perspective and point of view if I'm always talking to people that agree with me 100%, right? But when I'm able to have a conversation with somebody that doesn't necessarily see the world the way that I do, or like she said, somebody's in a different perspective or vantage point, looking at the same thing, and they're seeing something different. Unless I'm able to have a conversation with them and try to look at it from their lens, like, it's really hard for me to grow. And me personally, I want to grow, right? And me personally, I don't want these things to stay the same. So like that's the reason we're doing what we do. So we want to bring the next guest on, Eugene Patrick. I am excited to hear either the question or the comment that he has. Eugene has always got a heavy loaded question on these type of subjects. So what up, Eugene? Introduce yourself. Fire away with your question, bro.
Welcome.
Man, why'd you call it a loaded question? But anyway, so I don't even know where to begin because I know you're short of time. So how about this? So why, Steve, are you calling yourself white? And why, Dewan, are you calling yourself black? Since these are colors. To me, you both look like human beings.
So I would say a couple reasons for me personally. One, when you're communicating, it's important that you like have a standard like language terms that people agree to. It makes it easy to communicate that way, right? So that's like, I guess the one of the answers, right? If I say I'm a black male, everybody kind of like that has some definition to it in the context of America. The other reason is, I think that. So, and I'm not sure. I'm probably like adding some stuff that you didn't say to the question because of the different ways that I've heard that question asked. But it's probably not even what you mean. But I'll say this. I like the term like black man. because I think that it carries a sense of strength, a sense of I'm not ashamed. I think that I'm saying a lot when I say that. I think I'm saying that, look, like there's been a lot thrown at the people that identify as Black, and with all that that's been being thrown at us, like I stand before you just as strong as anybody else. And I think that a part of that is me kind of giving a shout out to those that came before me and have paid some of the heavy costs associated with just being Black in this space 400 years prior to now. Right? That's the reason that I say I'm a Black man. Steve would have to answer the other question for himself.
Of course.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, so I recognize the fact that race is a social construct. I recognize the fact that like the idea was introduced along with this purpose of separating and creating division and oppression, etc. At the same time, I think people have always done that in different ways, whether that's nationalistically or whatever, as you look at history. But again, some of the same reasons as Dewan. I think it's helpful. I mean, until we get to the place where everybody is on board and just kind of obliterate across the board, I use terms that people understand. And also at the same time, I think they're helpful terms to understand and really draw out some of the things in our culture, in our society, that are not the same. There are just differences based upon these things that we define as social constructs, and they're not always cut and dry. There's a ton of nuance, and not everybody that identifies as white American is this, that, and the other. Not everybody that identifies as Jamaican American or Black American or Mexican American. Like, there's a ton of difference between there. There's a ton of nuance, but still, like, I think they're helpful terms for us to be able to have these types of conversations and address the inequities.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but is Black and white something that was created for slavery?
So I'm not a historian, but I think what Steve said was, like, he realizes, and I realize as well, like, that race is a social construct, right? So in other words, like, it's something that was made up, right? Like, it's at the end of the day, we are people, right? And we get that. But sometimes, in simple terms, it's probably I guess I'm trying not to oversimplify it, right? But like there are like we are like all human beings, but as much as we realize we're all human beings, you have like male and female, right? And then like we also now there's kind of like some subject matter to like even bring that into question, right? So I say that to say we can go a lot of different places with that. Right? Like we can go like a lot of different places. But for me, really it's about communicating something clearly in a way that people understand. Now, if we can like incorporate an ad like into like the school system to debunk and like do away with the social construct that is race and racism and all that. If we can do away with that, then cool. But until everybody gets to the point where you might be, like we have to be able to communicate clearly. So that's mainly the reason that I would use the term Black man.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that makes sense. And we got to wrap up. So you're gonna have the last word. So if you want to school everybody and bring everybody to the next level, go ahead. You got like 2 minutes to do it.
Oh, me? Well, you're saying until everybody gets to that point. Well, everybody's not going to get to that point until somebody starts. So if me, you, and Steve started, that would be a start, and it could grow from there.
All right, you started, pick up some momentum. Then me and Steve Well, I can't speak for Steve. I'll jump on board.
Right. So, I mean, again, by calling ourselves black and calling this a white, to me, that automatically creates conflict because you're saying this person's that, this person's that, instead of just being human beings.
Yeah. I would say that I'm not necessarily opposed to conflict. I think conflict can be healthy, right? So if
that conflict, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that conflict that you saw in Georgia wasn't very healthy at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I think that like there's different kinds of conflict, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about that conflict. But I think that what we're attempting to do is create healthy dialogue, right? And when we're healthy dialogue, sometimes can be like we're all on the same page. Sometimes it can be like conflict involved in that. But as long as it's like moving the needle, or as long as somebody's growing and being stretched, like I think you're attempting to do right now, right? I think that that's okay. So yeah. I mean, I don't know if Steve, you got anything to add, but we got like a minute left before we hit the hour and a half mark.
No, I appreciate you being on, Eugene. I do think we need to wrap up. I think for the most part, what you say, we still need terms. Even if we bring us all to this, we still need to address like this stuff. Even if we decide on terminology today, the disparities will not just go away like that based on our terminology. So then we're just going to have to keep, we're still going to have to address some of the same things. Man, I really, really appreciate people who have stayed on and been with us on this journey. We want to talk to everybody. Like we're not going to beat you up if you get on with us. Every Sunday at 9, we're going to be here and taking questions, dealing with the hard stuff. We're going to talk about the stuff that people think we're not allowed to talk about in real ways. We're not going to dismiss it. We're going to embrace it. We're going to go through it. We're going to deal with it. And I think that's a healthy place to be. So
can I say one last thing?
Yeah, so you got wrap us up, and whatever you say, finish it up by saying, "Can I be honest?" And that's going to take a. So go ahead, Eugene.
Well, I started. Can I be honest? Can you guys be honest? If the media had said, instead of saying a black man was killed by 2 white men, if they had said an American was killed in Georgia, how would you feel about that?
Are they going to show me images? Are they going to show me any pictures?
No. If you had just heard on the radio, whatever, an American was killed, how would you feel about that, Steve? How would you feel about that? But you see, they play into you by saying a black man was killed. He wasn't. It's like almost, he's like saying, oh, it's something different. A man was killed. Not a black man. A man.
I hear you.
A human being was killed. And since we're all Americans, at least that's what they're saying, how about just saying an American was killed? But no, they want to say a black man was killed. And if you listen, it's almost like they're saying it's not a man, it's something less. Because when they say black man was killed, you automatically say, well, what happened? What was he doing? How did he get killed? But you don't think that if they say an American was killed, it's an injustice.
So
right?
That's way too lengthy.
Be honest.
And deal with at the end of the show.
Be honest. If they said an American was killed, what would happen? Be honest.
Who, me? Like
anybody.
If they said that and I didn't see any pictures, I wouldn't have that context, and I wouldn't have unpacked it and thought about it the way that I do when you say a black man was killed by a white man for jogging. But if you say a jogger was killed the way it was first communicated, I'm still like, whoa, why would somebody kill a jogger? You know what I mean? That's my honest answer. And we got to fade out on that. See us back here next Sunday at 9 o'clock sharp. We're gonna get the callers in faster, and we're gonna try to wrap up faster unless it gets intense the way it did today. And I won't make you any promises. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you next week.
Let me say one thing to that, because there's a lot of talk about media stoking things. I think the one thing I'd say, if I don't respond the same way to either, right? If that's how they present it. But once I find out what's going on, and if I see a set of patterns, which is why I think we talk about have to have some of the things, it's like, so what, are you trying to hide it? Because there's a pattern that Americans that look a certain way, whether we're calling them black or we're just calling them Americans, look a certain way, do this kind of stuff. The same thing. So look, one of the things we're going to talk about, because we've had a lot of people push back and be like, what about black on black violence? Why are we even talking about this? We'll talk about that too, but like, we have to look at patterns. So like, if there's patterns and we just ignore them, like Detroit keeps its own set of statistics so they can understand patterns and habits and address them. Like, that's why we have these conversations. So yeah, the media does things to, like, they're in business to sell. I get it, but like, that doesn't change the reality of the patterns, and that's what we have to deal with. That's what I would say about that. And again, like, I'm thankful for everybody that's on here, and you guys, I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to reading the comments later.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Peace.